had supported Jack White for 7 years and loved him for 7 years. He finally agreed to be with me. But it wasn't until later that I found out the truth. He was in love with his childhood sweetheart, someone he had grown up with. All along, he had hated me. He thought I had used my money to humiliate him and crush his dignity. After we got married, he treated me with extreme coldness for 10 years. Eventually, he moved out and rebuilt a family with his childhood sweetheart, leaving me alone in an empty house. I sank into despair and died full of regret. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn, returning to the day I decided to sponsor him. Jack White's childhood sweetheart threw herself onto him and glared at me furiously. "What? You think just because you're rich, you're better than us? We don't need your money." I smiled faintly. "You're overthinking it. Even if I burned this money, I wouldn't give it to you." Her face flushed with anger. "Oh, Naomi Brown. You think having some filthy money makes you untouchable? Well, we don't care." I looked at her clinging to Jack White and felt a little dazed. When my eyes met Jack's, his youthful face stunned me. At 20 years old, he still had that boyish charm, wearing a faded denim jacket that had been washed so many times it had lost its color. But no matter how worn his clothes were, his stunning features couldn't be hidden. His tall and upright posture, sharp jawline, and starry eyes made even the simplest clothes look extraordinary. I couldn't help but take a step back, gripping the table behind me to steady myself. How long had it been since I'd seen this version of Jack White? 10 years? 20? It felt like forever. I couldn't remember anymore. It was all part of my past life. Jack's expression froze for a moment when he saw me step back, while his childhood sweetheart kept chattering. But I could no longer hear her. Everything before me was exactly as it had been in my previous life. Back then, he had refused my sponsorship, but I insisted on giving it to him anyway. I had loved Jack White for 7 years. I knew how hard his life was. His father was a gambling addict, squandering every penny and coming home drunk, only to beat and berate Jack and his mother. Unable to endure the abuse, his mother eventually drowned herself in a river. From a young age, Jack had scavenged for trash and worked odd jobs to survive. The only way he managed to attend school was through scholarships and financial aid. Our paths should never have crossed. But Jack was a top student, and the private high school I attended gave him a scholarship to boost its reputation. That's how we ended up at the same school. At the time, my social circle was filled with spoiled kids from wealthy families. None of us cared about studying. We spent our days aimlessly wasting time, waiting to go abroad, get a degree, and inherit our family businesses. Jack was the only exception. He had clear goals, focused in class, and worked hard after school. Despite his financial struggles, he never showed any shame. He carried himself with quiet dignity, and I couldn't help falling for him. I liked him so much that I couldn't stand seeing him suffer. Back then, I was young and naive, always forcing what I thought was good onto him. If he had to work late into the night and didn't have time for breakfast, I would bring him food from home. "Jack, my housekeeper makes the best Wagyu beef. Try it. Oh, and this foie gras. It's amazing. My dad had it flown in just for us." I was the only child in my family, spoiled by everyone around me from birth. I was so sheltered, my head full of foolish thoughts. All I wanted was to give Jack the best of everything, completely ignoring whether he wanted it or not. Our classmates would laugh. "Oh, Jack, do you even know what foie gras is? Bet you've never even had chicken liver." "Huh." I snapped back. "Mind your own business." But I didn't notice Jack clutching the lunchbox tightly, his fingers turning white. After a moment, he returned it to me and said coldly, "Thank you, but no. Don't be like that, Jack." I protested. Another boy smirked. "Hey, Jack, if you get together with Naomi, you'll never have to work a day in your life. Just marry her, and your dad can gamble all he wants. You won't even have to worry about school fees anymore." Everyone burst into laughter. I slammed my hand on the table. "Shut up, all of you." The others quickly fell silent, but Jack White suddenly stood up and walked out. I chased after him, trying to shove the lunchbox into his hands. "Jack, don't listen to their nonsense. Just eat the food. If you don't, and then go to work later, your body won't be able to handle it." He stopped and turned around sharply. His eyes, filled with hatred and disdain, froze me in place. Teenagers tend to have short memories. Before long, I forgot about that incident and continued pestering Jack White. For him, I even started taking my studies seriously. When he got into the same university as me, my dad was so happy he doubled my allowance. Jack became even busier in college. His financial aid didn't come through, and the poverty subsidies were snatched away by a classmate with connections. At his lowest point, Jack could only afford one steamed bun a day, pairing it with free soup from the cafeteria to stave off hunger. I couldn't stand it anymore and offered to help him financially, but he refused. He worked 3 part-time jobs daily, until one day, he collapsed on the street from exhaustion. I couldn't hold back any longer and forced him to accept my help. Jack White, why won't you take my money? Why are you working yourself to death like this? What are you trying to prove? I even went to his professor and secretly paid his tuition. By then, I'd learned to be more considerate of his pride. During meals, I'd drag him along and pretend I couldn't finish my food, insisting he help me eat. When I wanted to go out, I'd claim I had free tickets and make him join me. Slowly, Jack and I grew closer. I ended up supporting him until graduation. To make him happy, I even sponsored his childhood sweetheart. After graduation, Jack started his own business. He had always excelled academically and had developed a game app with some friends during college, but they struggled to find investors. No matter what they tried, they hit dead ends. Seeing him so dispirited, I couldn't bear it. I convinced my dad to invest in his project. That night, Jack was unusually quiet. I was leaning against his shoulder, nearly dozing off, when he suddenly spoke. "Naomi, why are you doing all this?" At the time, I thought he was asking why I was so good to him. Feeling at ease, I answered, "Because I like you." "Of course. Jack, do you like me?" I clung to his arm, playfully teasing. "I've been so good to you. If you still don't want to be with me, you'd have no heart at all." It was just a joke, but Jack didn't respond. I thought his silence meant consent. That's how we ended up together. 2 years later, Jack and I got married. The wedding was rushed and simple. Jack said he didn't like big gatherings, so we only invited a few close family and friends, all of them mine. He had no one on his side except himself. After we got married, Jack remained distant. Back then, I was so foolish. I thought it was just his personality, that he was naturally reserved. I believed that if I kept treating him well, even the coldest heart would eventually warm up. But I was wrong. His heart had never belonged to me. It had always been with someone else. By the 3rd year of our marriage, the cracks in our relationship were irreparable. I could no longer endure his indifference. I confronted him, demanding to know if he still loved his childhood sweetheart. He simply stared at me coldly without saying a word. When I pushed him further, he slammed the door and left. His silent treatment drove me to madness. Each time he came home, I would lash out, questioning and berating him. During our worst fights, I would lose control. "Jack White, if I'd known you'd be such an ungrateful bastard, I would have raised a dog instead. At least a dog would wag its tail at me." For a moment, his expression twisted with rage, but he quickly regained his composure. After that day, he stopped coming home altogether. Later, I learned that Jack had been living with his childhood sweetheart the entire time. They had built a new home together, even started a family. While they were happy and complete, I was left alone in an empty house, surrounded by silence. The love I had poured into him for so many years had turned into venom, soaked with hatred. Jack White eventually succeeded in his business ventures and became even wealthier than my father. I had no way to retaliate against him. The only thing I had left was our marriage, so I gambled my entire life on revenge. I refused to divorce him, no matter how much money he offered. He had destroyed me, and I wouldn't let him have peace either. The woman he loved could only remain a mistress, hidden away in the shadows, forever unable to stand in the light. Their child would forever be labeled an illegitimate one, born in disgrace. Jack White didn't dare to file for divorce. He feared the scandal would harm his company's stock prices, and the other board members wouldn't allow it either. And so, we dragged each other down for 10 years. During those 10 years, no matter how hysterical or desperate I became, no matter how much I begged or pleaded, he never softened. He never came back to see me. Day after day, I sank deeper into despair. My body withered, ravaged by illness, until I passed away, broken and alone. Naomi Brown. I suddenly snapped back to reality, my gaze landing on Jack White. A wave of deep hatred surged through my veins, coursing through every fiber of my being until my heart felt like it was about to explode. I nearly couldn't stand upright. After my death, he must have finally gotten what he wanted. Perhaps his coldness toward me had always been intentional, a way to wear me down, to destroy me faster. I still remember how my medicine had suddenly been switched one day. When I asked the housekeeper, she only said it was a gentler formula and that I shouldn't worry. I didn't think much of it at the time, but not long after I started taking it, my health deteriorated rapidly. Soon, I couldn't even sit up. Not long after that, I died. It must have been him. Who else could it have been? Who else hated me so much, so desperately wanted me gone? He did it for her, for Lynn Drew, so she could take my place. How vile. I looked at Jack White and fought the urge to lunge at him and kill him right then and there. My hatred was suffocating. Looking back, aside from being young and naive and occasionally disregarding his pride, I had done nothing to wrong him. Even when we got married, I hadn't forced him. I had even asked him if he was willing. I told him I could wait if he wasn't ready. Yet he still hated me this much. Lynn Drew, just as she had in my previous life, glared at me with righteous indignation. Naomi Brown, do you think having money makes you superior? How dare you humiliate people like this? I turned to look at her. She wore a simple white dress, her figure delicate and frail, like a fragile flower. This was the woman Jack White loved, the one he was willing to sacrifice everything for, even if it meant killing me in the process. In my past life, it had been the same. Jack and I were talking calmly. I had told him that if he felt uncomfortable accepting my help, he could treat it as a loan and pay me back once he earned enough money. But Lynn had suddenly accused me of throwing money at him, of humiliating him. Later, through my arguments with Jack, I finally understood. He had always believed that my financial support was an insult, a way of degrading him. I suddenly found it laughable. Looking at Lynn's protective stance in front of Jack, I curled my lips into a mocking smile. You're overthinking it. Even if I burned this money, I wouldn't give it to you. Jack's face changed dramatically. Lynn's expression froze for a moment before she snapped. What did you just say? I smiled. You think my support was meant to humiliate you? We're classmates. After all, how could I possibly insult you like that? If that's how you feel, then forget it. Go back to working your part-time jobs. Lynn's family situation wasn't much better than Jack's. Her father had racked up debts and fled with the money, leaving her mother to work herself into illness just to support her education. Now bedridden, her mother couldn't even take care of herself, perhaps because of their similar backgrounds. Lynn and Jack had always been close. She was constantly by his side, always seeking his attention. Whenever Jack and I went out together, Lynn would inevitably show up, clinging to him and insisting on joining us. If I ever protested, she would hide behind him, her voice trembling as she pitifully asked, Naomi, do you dislike me because I'm poor? Do you not want to be friends with me? Before I could say anything, Jack White would always shield her behind him. Naomi, if you think we're not worthy, then don't come with us, he'd say coldly. I could only take her along when we went out. At dinner, she'd sit with us, tilting her head to look at the lobster on her plate. Do you always eat things this fancy? She'd ask, her tone a mix of envy and melancholy. I guess we really don't belong to the same world, do we? There were several times when Jack and I were having a pleasant conversation, but as soon as she made remarks like that, his expression would darken. He would stop smiling and wouldn't talk to me anymore. At first, I thought she said those things carelessly, without meaning any harm. But then, one day, as I was walking with Jack, I turned my head to say something to him and caught an unexpected glimpse of his face. His expression was cold, devoid of emotion, and his eyes were filled with a mix of resentment and malice. When he realized I'd seen him, he froze for a moment, then quickly forced a smile. But that fleeting moment made my heart go cold. It was then that I finally understood. He didn't just dislike me. He hated me. In the early days of our marriage, there had been a brief period of harmony. Back then, his company had just found its footing and landed its first big deal. After the celebratory banquet, he came home drunk, wrapping his arm around me and laughing. Honey, what do you like? I'll buy it for you. I felt sorry for how hard he worked to earn money and held him close. Content. There's no need. Just the thought alone makes me happy. But he wouldn't let it go, puffing out his chest. He insisted. A husband makes money for his wife to spend. I'll buy you a purse. What kind do you like? Even as he fell asleep, he mumbled, I've made money now. You won't have to suffer with me anymore. True to his word, the next day, He bought me a purse. But before I could say anything, Lindru appeared. She looked at the purse in my hand, her expression turning strange. Then, with a laugh, she snatched it from me and said to Jack, "Oh, this purse? I remember Naomi had one just like this back in college. It was a gift from a guy who had a crush on her. Wasn't it?" She said it was too cheap to wear outside. I couldn't even remember if what she said was true, but Jack's face immediately darkened. Without a word, he took the purse and walked out. After that, he became cold and distant toward me. The next time I saw that purse, it was on Lindru's shoulder. She smirked and said, feigning innocence, "Oh, Naomi, Jack gave me this purse. You're not mad, are you?" I refused to let her keep it. Her face flushed, and her eyes reddened as she stammered, "You already have so many purses. Why fight me for just this one? It's the only one I have." Jack pulled me away, his face grim. "If you don't even care about it, why are you fighting her for it? Or do you just enjoy taking things from others?" Prideful and stubborn, I couldn't take the insult. We had a huge fight and parted on bad terms. Only later did I realize Lynn hadn't been talking about the purse. She was talking about Jack. She thought I had taken him from her. That's why she hated me so much. Jack, however, seemed to panic for the first time. Grabbing my arm tightly, he said, "Wait." I turned to look at him and saw his expression waver, emotions surging in his eyes, as if something long buried was on the verge of breaking free. His voice trembled slightly. "This isn't right. It shouldn't be like this. Naomi, why did you stop sponsoring me? Aren't you the one who likes me so much?" I was startled by Jack White's sudden outburst. What was wrong with him? Was he crazy or just angry? The way I spoke to Lindru was sharp. But in my last life, at this point, I hadn't even won him over yet. He had always been cold, stoic, and distant, never speaking much. Was he having some kind of mental breakdown? I tried to pull my hand away, but he only tightened his grip, his eyes faintly reddening. "Naomi, don't you like me anymore? Are you leaving me?" Now I was truly frightened. Jack White had never said anything like this to me before. I stared at him, wide-eyed. "Jack, have you lost your mind? Or did you take the wrong meds?" He didn't reply, just stared at me unblinking, his expression both obsessive and crazed. His behavior irritated me. After everything he'd done to me in my last life, he dared to glare at me like this now? "Didn't you say my support humiliated you? Jack White, are you just shamelessly waiting for me to beg you to live off my money now?" Lindru opened her mouth in shock, clearly not expecting me to speak to Jack that way. In my previous life, this was the time I had liked him the most. Every word I said back then was careful, afraid of hurting his pride. But now, I didn't care anymore. "Jack White, what are you even? A heartless ingrate who bites the hand that feeds you? I really don't understand how I ever liked someone like you." Jack didn't get angry as I expected. Instead, his face drained of all color, leaving it ashen and lifeless. I shook his hand off and walked away without looking back. The card I had given Jack earlier had $20,000 in it, enough to cover his tuition and living expenses. I took the card to the mall, spent the money, and didn't bother to give it to him. Instead, I splurged on myself. Thinking about it now, the only thing Jack had ever given me in my last life was that single purse. After that, there was nothing. Not for birthdays, anniversaries, or holidays. He never remembered. Or perhaps he just didn't care. Meanwhile, Lindru, who later transformed herself into a rich wife, flaunted Jack's money everywhere. She bought purses, watches, and clothes costing tens of thousands at a time. Every time she got something new, she would show it off to me. "Naomi, look at this. Jack got this for me on his trip to Paris. What did he get you?" She'd cover her mouth with a fake laugh. "Oh, nothing, right? He didn't bring you anything, did he?" Her taunts always led to huge fights between Jack and me, making our relationship worse. Looking back now, I wondered why I had ever cared so much. I had money. Why did I need to depend on a man to buy me things? If I wanted something, I could just buy it myself. With that $20,000, I bought 4 purses and even added another $10,000 for good measure. On my way back to campus, as fate would have it, I ran into Lindru and Jack White as soon as I got off the bus. When Jack saw the luxury shopping bags in my hands, his expression changed instantly, filled with poorly hidden jealousy and frustration. At this time in his life, Jack was still dirt poor, barely scraping by. Lynn, too, was in no better shape. She was wearing a white dress so worn out that the fabric was fraying. Although she had carefully trimmed the loose threads and ironed it neatly, it was clear at a glance that it was a cheap outfit from a roadside stall. "Naomi, you sure are rich," she said with a sudden sweetness in her tone. I noticed how quickly Lynn could switch faces. Just moments ago, she was calling me Naomi Brown and sneering at me, saying, "What's the big deal about having a little money?" Now she was calling me Naomi, like we were best friends. She stared intently at the Chanel shopping bag in my hand. His fingers clenched tightly into fists. "Chanel bags are expensive, aren't they? Just one could cover our tuition fees for several years." Lynn leaned closer to Jack White and said, seemingly unintentionally, "We really don't belong to the same world." In the past, whenever she said things like this, I would pale, fumbling for words, which only made Jack more annoyed. But now, to hell with that. I smiled faintly. "It seems you're not just poor. You're also not very smart. You're only realizing this now." I tilted my head slightly. "I live in a 300 square meter apartment in the city center. You live in a cramped 30 square meter rental on the outskirts. Of course, we're not from the same world." Lynn's face turned green, her features twisting momentarily in anger. I walked up to her, speaking slowly and clearly. "Lynn, you will never belong to my world. You'll stay envious of me until the day you die." Her expression quickly shifted as she turned to Jack, ready to play the victim. I let out a mocking laugh. "Is hiding behind a man all you can do? Just like a cockroach in the gutter. Don't bother asking Jack for help. The two of you are equally pathetic. Disgusting. Really." After hurling those words at this shameless pair, I left happily. It wasn't that I didn't want to take revenge. I still remembered how they had drugged me in my past life. But this time, the drugging hadn't happened yet, and I had no evidence. Besides, I didn't want to waste my life on trash like them. My last life was already ruined by their manipulation. This time, I wanted to stay far away from them, whether they thrived or suffered. It was no longer my concern. I wanted a fresh start. But even though I wanted to avoid them, they seemed determined to haunt me. A few days later, a friend came to me, gleefully sharing the gossip. "Hey, I heard you didn't give Jack and Lynn any money. They're in a really bad spot now. They can't even afford tuition fees. Jack's been working like crazy to make ends meet. And Lynn tried to buy a new dress the other day, only $80, and couldn't even scrape enough together. She had to sell that iPhone you gave Jack just to barely cover their tuition." I paused, trying to recall the incident. Then I remembered. In my last life, I had noticed Jack's old, beat-up phone and bought him the latest iPhone. The very next day, I saw that phone in Lynn's hands. Lowering my gaze, I chuckled coldly. "Really? That's pretty poor." I hadn't walked far when Lynn stopped me. Her expression was frantic as she grabbed my arm and demanded, "Naomi Brown, why aren't you helping Jack anymore? Don't you know he's ranked first in his major? If his education gets delayed because of tuition, can you live with the guilt?" I froze for a moment, then laughed in exasperation. In my past life, I eventually realized what kind of people they truly were. Shameless to the core. They wanted other people's money but refused to lower their pride. They'd take from you with one hand while cursing you with the other. Absolutely despicable. "His education has nothing to do with me," I said, shrugging. "I'm not his father." "How can you say that?" Lynn cried out, drawing the attention of nearby classmates. Seizing the opportunity, her tears began to flow as she put on a pitiful act, looking like a delicate flower refusing to bow to adversity. "One of your bags could pay for several years of our tuition," she said, her voice trembling with accusation. "Why don't you help us? Or are you just that selfish? You'd rather waste your money than use it to help someone in need." Lynn probably thought everyone was like Jack White, easily manipulated by her shameless rhetoric. Before I could respond, my friend, whose family situation was similar to mine but with a far more explosive temper, spoke up first. He sneered at Lynn. "What asylum left its doors open and let you out? You idiot! If you want money, go beg for it. Better yet, sell yourself. Sure, you're not much to look at, but someone might pay $80 for a quick deal. 10 times gets you $800. And 100 times, there's your tuition. You've got arms, legs, kidneys, and reproductive organs. Why not use those instead of shamelessly begging others? Is he your dad or something?" Lynn, who always played the innocent green tea girl act, had clearly never been hit with such blunt, brutal words. She stood there dumbfounded, unable to respond. Other classmates chimed in. Yeah, why don't you apply for financial aid if you're so poor? The nerve to demand money from someone with such a nasty attitude. Shameless. You totally deserve to be broke. Someone else added. Lynn staggered back a step, her eyes wide in disbelief. I smirked. I often treated my classmates to bubble tea or paid for group dinners. Naturally, they sided with me. Thinking about it now, what did Lynn have besides Jack? Nothing. There wasn't a single thing where she could outshine me. If I hadn't been inexplicably obsessed with Jack in my last life, someone like her wouldn't have even appeared in my world. At that moment, Jack White suddenly arrived. Lynn's eyes lit up as if she had found her savior. She immediately leaned close to him, tears brimming in her eyes. I was just asking Naomi to help you out a little, she said, her voice trembling. She can afford to buy so many bags, but she refuses to help you. I don't even know what I did to offend her, but she called me all sorts of awful names. It's so unfair. Naomi, she continued, her expression pitiful. I know you look down on me, but I'm only doing this for Jack. He's so talented, so brilliant. I was utterly sick of her. Lynn Drew was like an annoying toad. Not deadly but incredibly irritating. The worst part was how she clung on and never let go. Jack frowned slightly. Did you insult her? I couldn't help but laugh mockingly. Of course. He was always like this. The moment Lynn played the victim, he would rush to scold me without even understanding the situation. In my past life, every time this happened, I'd be furious and heartbroken, arguing with him until I cried myself to sleep. But not anymore. I glanced at him, unfazed. Yes, I did. Everything she said is true. I insulted her. To my surprise, Jack didn't get angry. Instead, he lowered his head slightly, his tone gentle, almost appeasing. Then she must have done something to upset you. I'm sure she didn't mean to. Lynn apologized to Naomi. I stared at him, stunned, wondering if I was still dreaming. Lynn was equally dumbfounded. After a long pause, her lips quivered as she stammered. What? What did you just say? Jack's expression turned cold. I told you to apologize. Lynn's eyes reddened, and she stepped back in disbelief, biting her lip hard. How? How could you say that? I was just as shocked. Jack White had just asked his precious Lynn Drew to apologize to me. Had he lost his mind? For a fleeting moment, a thought crossed my mind. Could it be that he, too, had been reborn? But I quickly dismissed the idea. It was impossible. In my last life, Jack hated me so much he resorted to drugging me to death. If he had been reborn, he would have stayed far away from me the moment he got the chance. No, there had to be some other reason. He must have another plan. I stepped back, putting some distance between us, and looked at him warily. Jack White flinched as though my gaze had stabbed him. His eyes filled with hurt as he looked at me. Naomi, I know I was wrong before. Please forgive me. Okay? Don't you still like me? Let's be together. Okay? I'll make up for everything I owe you. The more he spoke, the more agitated he became. By the end, he was staring at me with desperation, as if I were some treasure he had lost and miraculously found again. His voice even carried a faint tremor, like he was on the verge of tears. This was absurd. I clenched my fists, unable to stop the wave of bitterness rising inside me. In my past life, I had spent everything, my time, my dignity, my entire existence, chasing after just one sentence from him. And yet, he had never once said he liked me, not even as I lay dying. Now, after I had humiliated him and ridiculed him, suddenly, he claimed to like me. What did that make everything I sacrificed in my past life? Nothing. I forced a mocking smile. You want to be with me? Jack White, who do you think you are? Do you even deserve to be with me? One piece of clothing I wear costs more than 3 years of your hard work. Don't overestimate yourself. What makes you think you're qualified to be with me? If he thought my help had humiliated him before, then I would show him what true humiliation felt like. As expected, Jack's face turned pale. Desperately, he stammered. I know I don't have money now, but just wait for me, okay? I'll have money in the future. That much was true. In my last life, he did become wealthy, but what did that have to do with me? The hatred and disgust I had buried deep inside surged to the surface. I looked at him with contempt. Jack White, Even if every man in the world were dead, I still wouldn't be with you. After I walked away, Jack stood frozen in place, looking utterly lost. His shoulders slumped, and he seemed lifeless, like all the fire had been drained from him. He looked so pitiful it was almost laughable, but I felt nothing but cold amusement. I didn't know what game he was playing, or what sudden epiphany he thought he'd had. It didn't matter. The Naomi Brown who had loved him wholeheartedly was already dead, buried in my last life. In this life, all I had for him was hatred. Without my financial support, Jack and Lynn Drew were living even worse than they had in my past life. Jack's programming project never sold, and his attempt at starting a business failed miserably. I heard they were so desperate now that they were considering selling their blood to make ends meet. But none of that mattered to me anymore. The next morning, my phone rang. I picked it up and saw a name on the screen, Ethan. For a moment, I froze. It had been over a decade since I had last seen these names. In my past life, when I was with Jack, he didn't like my wealthy second-generation friends and forbid me from associating with them. Over time, I had drifted away from them. Ethan was the same person Lynn had mentioned before, the one who supposedly gave me a purse in college. Our families had been close friends for generations, and we'd grown up together. I answered the call, and Ethan's excited voice came through. Naomi, I heard you finally gave that Jack White kid a piece of your mind. I hadn't even had a chance to reply before he continued, his tone full of glee. It's about time. That idiot's been freeloading off you and dragging you down for ages. We didn't dare say anything before. But damn, you've finally woken up. I smiled faintly. Is there something you need? There's a gathering tonight at our usual spot. Be there at 8. No excuses. After the call ended, I sat for a long time, trying to recall where the usual spot was. Then it hit me. It was a bar we used to frequent. Back when we were younger, a group of us childhood friends would often hang out there. But after I got together with Jack, I stopped going out with them. I used to be bold and confident, living as I pleased. But for the sake of love, I had clipped my own wings and dulled my claws. I stopped going to high-end malls. For the first time, I learned to browse street stalls and local markets. I no longer wore luxury brands. Instead, I carefully picked out clothes that cost just a few bucks. Also, Jack White wouldn't frown when he stood next to me. I didn't dare eat at the restaurants I used to frequent. When we did go out, it was only to cheap places like small diners, where we'd share a simple dish of shumai. I turned myself into someone timid and cautious, all in the hope that he might like me just a little more. I had once loved him with all my heart, completely and utterly. When I arrived at the bar that night, Ethan was ecstatic. He kept urging me to drink, and I didn't refuse. For once, I let myself relax. This group of friends had always been good to me, especially Ethan. When I got married, he had even told me that if I was ever mistreated, I could come to him, and he'd teach Jack a lesson. Later, he really did confront Jack. At the time, I had just found out I was pregnant. The baby was the result of a drunken night when Jack came home. I was overjoyed, foolishly believing that having a child would finally win his heart. But then Lynn Drew found out about my pregnancy. She came to our house, taunting me, provoking me until I couldn't take it anymore. When I raised my hand to hit her, Jack came home. He instinctively grabbed my wrist and pushed me away. I fell, hitting my stomach against the corner of the table. Blood immediately pooled beneath me, and I was rushed to the hospital. I was young and healthy then, not yet the hollow shell I became later. And the baby was saved. But Lynn wouldn't let it go. She came to our house every day to scream and insult me. Sometimes, she would call in the middle of the night, just so I could hear her and Jack together. I remember one call vividly. Her voice was soft, seductive. Jack's breathless whisper replied, "Relax." Full of affection. My stomach churned violently. I covered my mouth and ran to the bathroom, vomiting until my tears mixed with bile. My body shook uncontrollably. And when I looked up at the mirror, the woman staring back at me was pale and lifeless, with bloodshot eyes and tear-streaked cheeks. She looked like she could collapse at any moment. That night, I lost the baby for good. The doctor told me to rest and avoid stress, but I couldn't control my emotions. When Jack found out, he was silent for a long time before saying, "We can always have another child." But I never had another child. Jack and Lynn, however, did. They had their happy little family. When Ethan found out about the miscarriage, he came to our house and beat Jack to within an inch of his life. If I hadn't stopped him, He might have killed Jack. I held Ethan back, but his eyes were red with fury as he shouted at Jack. What did you say when you got married? You said you'd treat her well. She used to laugh all the time. And now look at her. How could you do this to her? Jack didn't fight back that day. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stood there silently, saying nothing. Now, as I sat in the bar, Ethan nudged me to drink again. We clinked glasses, and I downed my drink in one gulp. After several rounds, Ethan's face was flushed, and he leaned closer to me, speaking in a low voice. Do you really not like Jack anymore? I glanced at him, and he quickly looked away, his ears turning pink. I couldn't help but find it amusing. I had always known Ethan liked me. In my past life, though, I only had eyes for Jack. I even ruined my relationship with Ethan because of him. Yet every time Jack hurt me, Ethan was the first to stand up for me. In this life, if I were to find someone, I would hope to find someone like Ethan. I finally understood now that love alone couldn't solve everything. Jack White and I came from entirely different worlds, different backgrounds, different upbringings, different circumstances. We were never meant to be together. He grew up in a home full of hostility, raising his guard early in life, sharp, sensitive, insecure, and cold. Meanwhile, I was raised in a world of comfort and unconditional love. My family gave me the confidence to love recklessly, to sacrifice everything for someone else. But that same confidence led to my downfall. I thought love could conquer all, but I didn't understand that someone like Jack White couldn't handle pure, unselfish love. It was impossible to change him. I nodded slowly. Yes, I was blind before. Ethan lowered his head, leaning closer. In a low voice, he said, "Then look at me." Before he could finish, someone suddenly grabbed my wrist and yanked me to my feet. Startled, I turned to see Jack White's stormy face. His gaze was dark and unsettling, his body tense as if every muscle was wound tight. There was a strained calmness in his voice, barely masking emotions I couldn't quite place. "Come with me." He practically dragged me out the door. I struggled to break free, finally pushing him away with all my strength. "What's wrong with you? Are you crazy?" Jack held onto me tightly, his grip frighteningly strong. Since my rebirth, his attitude toward me had been almost unnervingly gentle, even subservient. But now, his expression was cold and shadowed, and the intensity in his dark eyes was terrifying. His voice came out hoarse. "Naomi, what did you just say?" I froze, then clenched my teeth. "I said I don't like you anymore. I was blind before." "You don't like me anymore?" He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp, bitter, almost mocking. His grip tightened as he pulled me closer, his eyes boring into mine with a wild, unhinged intensity. His voice was icy, as if shards of ice could shatter from it. "Say that again." For a moment, I was too stunned to respond. "All those things you said before. That you liked me, that you wanted to be with me, that you would never leave me. Were all those lies?" His gaze was crazed, but his words made me freeze. No, something wasn't right. I hadn't said those things in this life. Those were words I'd spoken in my past life. Before we got married, my entire body began to tremble. How could he know? Jack seemed to realize his slip. He hesitated, taking an unconscious step back. I lowered my voice, trying to keep it steady. "Jack White, you came back too, didn't you?" He didn't respond, his silence as deafening as the wind howling around us. Fallen leaves scraped across the ground, dragged by the night breeze. Occasionally, a car would pass by, its headlights momentarily brightening the street before fading back into darkness. I let out a bitter laugh. "Jack White, how dare you?" He was reborn too. After everything he had done to me in our past life, how could he stand in front of me now and say these things? I had given him my all, only to die filled with regret and despair. In this life, I just wanted to move on and live peacefully. But here he was, tearing open my old wounds, reminding me that I could never escape the nightmare of my past life. "Naomi, please," he said, his voice trembling with desperation. "Let me explain. I did come back, but I've realized everything now. I was an idiot in our past life. I didn't understand my own feelings. I've always loved you. I just didn't see it until it was too late. Please, let me make it up to you. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I turned away, refusing to look at him. I spoke each word slowly and clearly. "Jack White, how dare you? How dare he? After hurting me so deeply, Speak so lightly of having loved me all along? The anger and hatred boiling inside me surged to the surface. Without thinking, I slapped him with all the strength I had. His lips split, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. But he simply wiped it away casually and said, "Is that enough? If it's not, go ahead. Hit me again." Even though his words were sharp, his eyes suddenly reddened, and before I knew it, tears were streaming down his face. I was stunned. Jack White had never cried in front of me before. In our past life, even during his darkest times, when his father gambled away his hard-earned tuition money, beat him senseless, and left him covered in bruises as he went to school the next day, he didn't cry. When he worked 3 jobs, fainting from exhaustion and hunger, he didn't shed a single tear. I once thought he had a heart made of stone. Yet here he was, crying in front of me, his tears mixed with the blood on his face, dripping down as his shoulders slumped. He looked utterly defeated, and his voice cracked as he begged, "Naomi, please come back. If you hate me, if you want to kill me, that's fine. But please, don't leave me." I felt like I was losing my mind. "Jack White, are you out of your mind? What the hell is wrong with you?" He lowered his head, his voice trembling. I was so insecure. Back then, I was so full of fear, thinking everyone was out to hurt me. I didn't dare like you. I didn't dare believe that you truly liked me. I was terrified that if I let myself accept your love, one day you'd turn around and tell me I wasn't good enough for you, that it was all just a game. Call me an idiot. Tell me I deserve to die. Hit me. Yell at me. It doesn't matter. Just please, come back. He broke down completely, sobbing as if he were trying to let out years of pent-up emotions. You don't know what those years were like after you left. I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "Jack White, didn't you love Lynn Drew? Didn't you poison me in our past life for her?" "Poison you?" He froze. "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb," I yelled, gripping the roadside railing so tightly that my knuckles turned white. If I didn't hold on to something, I wasn't sure I could stop myself from slapping him again. My medicine was tampered with. At first, my health was improving, but after I started taking that medicine, my condition only got worse. Eventually, I bit down hard on my tongue, the bitter taste spreading through my mouth. The man I had loved had killed me for another woman. Even saying it aloud again felt like being stabbed in the chest. Jack's voice was frantic. "I never did that. I told the housekeeper to take good care of you. How could I ever hurt you?" We locked eyes, and in that moment, realization dawned on both of us. If it wasn't Jack, then the only other person who could have tampered with my medicine was the housekeeper. Or, no, the person pulling the strings had to be Lynn Drew. So it was her. Lynn Drew had killed me. My emotions were a tangled mess. But strangely, I wasn't devastated. I had already died once. Did it really matter who was responsible? Whether it was Jack or Lynn, she had killed me for his sake. He couldn't be absolved of blame either. A deep sense of exhaustion swept over me, draining all the anger and hate I had carried. Love or hate, it no longer mattered. I was just tired. All I wanted in this life was to stay far away from him and live a quiet, peaceful life. The sudden downpour caught us off guard. The heavy rain fell relentlessly, drenching everything. Jack stood there in the rain, his disheveled figure looking utterly miserable. I couldn't tell if the water streaming down his face was rain or tears. "Naomi," he begged, his voice raw. "Please." "And what about Lynn Drew?" I asked coldly. I stared at him blankly. "In our past life, you and Lynn Drew already had a child. What more is there to say?" Jack White was at a loss for words. After a long silence, he finally muttered, "It was because I got you drunk. It only happened that one time." I pulled my lips into a mocking smile but said nothing. Jack lowered his head further, his voice trembling. "From beginning to end, the only person I ever loved was you. I never loved Lynn Drew." Before I could respond, a voice suddenly rang out from the shadows. "Then what am I?" Lynn Drew stepped out from the darkness, her old white dress soaked by the rain and clinging to her body. Her voice trembled as she looked at Jack, her expression both furious and heartbroken. "You love her? Then what am I? All these years I've been by your side. What does that make me?" Jack clenched his fists tightly, his gaze turning cold. The softness he once showed her was completely gone, replaced by pure hatred. Lynn didn't seem to remember anything from our past life. She was still the same Lynn Drew, stuck in the same patterns. She hadn't poisoned me yet in this life. I had no evidence. No reason to take revenge. Jack seemed to understand this as well. He didn't say anything. Lynn's voice cracked. You hate me? Jack White. You actually hate me. Jack's tone was icy. If you hadn't constantly come between me and Naomi, we wouldn't have ended up like this. Lynn laughed bitterly. I came between you? Jack White. Stop pretending. If you weren't so insecure and self-absorbed, how could I have interfered? You're the one with the darkness in your heart, wanting her but too afraid to admit it. And now you're blaming me. Jack's hands trembled, veins bulging as rage consumed him. Lynn turned to me, tilting her head like a confused child, her voice light and curious. Naomi, you already have everything. Why do you still need to take Jack away from me? She didn't wait for my response, continuing on her own. You were born into a good family. You're beautiful. Everyone loves you, spoils you, gives you everything you want without you even asking. So many people adore you. Why do you still have to take Jack White from me? Her voice grew sharp, full of resentment. He's all I have. Why can't you let me keep him? You already have so much. I remained calm. Jack White is a person. Who he likes is his choice. I can't force him. And besides, I've never won. I've lost completely. Is that so? Lynn Drew stepped closer. And for the first time, I noticed that one of her hands was hidden behind her back. A wave of unease surged through me. Just as I began to step back, she pulled out a knife and lunged at me. Die. Her face twisted with madness. Her expression wild and frenzied. As long as you're dead, Jack White will still be mine. Naomi Brown, how dare you be so happy? You deserve to die. She was too close. I couldn't react in time. In that split second, I saw her bloodshot eyes reflected in my wide, terrified gaze. Before the knife could reach me, a sudden force shoved me hard to the side. The sound of the blade piercing flesh was muffled by the rain. Lynn froze, her eyes widening as she stared at Jack White, now standing between us. Blood seeped through his shirt, mixing with the rain as he swayed on his feet. Her hands, still clutching the knife, began to tremble. Jack, Jack. Her voice was a panicked whisper, her mind struggling to comprehend what she had just done. Jack, why? I turned back unsteadily and saw the knife deeply embedded in Jack White's abdomen. The blood flowing from the wound mixed with the rain, turning it a faint pink. He seemed unfazed, as if he didn't even feel the pain. Instead, he smiled weakly at me. As long as you're okay, that's all that matters. By the time we got him to the hospital, Jack had already passed out completely. He had lost too much blood and was rushed straight into the ICU. Lynn Drew was taken away by the police who arrived shortly after. It wasn't until the third day that Jack finally regained consciousness. I walked into the hospital room and stood by his bed, feeling like 1,000 words were stuck in my throat. Yet I couldn't say a single one. He looked frail, his complexion as pale as paper, but he managed a small, difficult smile. Naomi, you're safe. That's all I care about. My emotions were all over the place. Why did you take that knife for me? He lowered his lashes, his voice barely audible. I don't know. I just couldn't bear to see you get hurt. Lynn's aim had been for my heart, but Jack was tall enough that the knife missed any vital organs. What do you plan to do now? I asked suddenly. Jack seemed to understand immediately what I was implying. His voice was faint but firm. Whatever happens, she'll face the consequences. I let out a bitter laugh. That's very honest of you. But don't forget, in our past life, she gave you a child. I leaned back against a chair near his bed. He whispered hoarsely, but she killed you. I fell silent, unsure how to respond. Jack coughed a few times, his face contorting in pain before he spoke again, his voice breaking. Naomi, I really know I was wrong. I was so wrong before. His voice faltered as he struggled to control the trembling of his lips. If I could change, would you give me another chance? No, I interrupted him flatly. You saved my life this time, but in our past life, I died because of you. At best, we're even now. Even if you took that knife from me, it doesn't erase the pain you caused me before. His eyes turned red, and he bit down hard on his lip to suppress his emotions. But, Naomi, he whispered, his voice cracking, you once told me you'd love me forever. I suddenly felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. Smiling bitterly, I said, Jack White, love doesn't last forever. It can be worn down over time. And you spent 10 years grinding mine to nothing. Jack's face turned ashen, his expression one of utter despair. Naomi, you can't do this. You were the one who said you loved me first. As I turned to leave, I looked back one last time. Jack, in his hospital gown, looked small and weak, the oversized fabric hanging loosely on his frame. His face still resembled the boy I had once loved, but his soul seemed aged and broken. Perhaps we had loved each other once, but the timing was all wrong. Now, in a quiet voice, I said, Jack White, I truly don't love you anymore. I walked out of the room, and even from the hallway, I could hear his desperate sobbing. But Naomi, what about me? What was the point of all this? Was it just to hear you say you don't love me anymore? If that's the case, I would have been better off dying in our past life. I lowered my head, my eyes dry, empty of tears. I couldn't cry anymore. All my tears had been shed in my past life, leaving me completely drained. I walked away, leaving Jack White's desperate cries behind me, each step taking me further until I could no longer hear him at all. Jack didn't protect Lynn Drew. She was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 7 years in prison. She was also expelled from school. I heard that her mother, unable to bear the shame, jumped to her death. I didn't attend the trial. By then, I had come to understand why Lynn hated me so much. It wasn't just about Jack. It was jealousy. Jealousy that I had everything she didn't. She wanted to take Jack from me, not because she loved him, but to prove that she could win. When she realized she had lost everything, including Jack, she completely lost her mind. I heard that when she learned of her mother's death, she went utterly insane, rambling incoherently and even cursing the judge during her sentencing. It was me who arranged for her to find out about her mother's death. I asked my father to make some calls and ensure that Lynn received special attention in prison. I would never forget how she had poisoned me in our past life. She owed me, and I intended to make her repay every bit of it. 3 years later, I married Ethan. He put tremendous effort into our wedding, making it a grand event. Everyone who was anyone in the city was invited. It was extravagant and beautiful. Just as we were about to walk down the aisle, his secretary rushed over with a red envelope. Mr. Taylor, there's a check for $2 million inside. It's real, but there's no name on it. What should we do? Ethan and I exchanged a glance, and we both immediately knew who had sent it. Jack White. He had always been capable. Even after his first business failed, he had quickly rebuilt his career and achieved success again. Ethan chuckled lightly. Well, if someone's so eager to give us money, let's accept it. At that moment, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. The message was brief. If he ever treats you badly, come back to me. I'll always be waiting for you. Ethan glanced at the message and smirked. Let him wait, even in the next life. He won't get his chance. I deleted the text in front of him and blocked the number. Let's go, I said, slipping my arm through his and smiling softly. Everyone's waiting for us. The nights of sadness and tears were finally behind me. I would never look back.